Hey everybody, it's Z with a quest and got a rescue for you. Um, this one is May 2019 rescue, one for the Quest record books. This one was pretty interesting. Um, so here we go. Uh, as most of you know, we were about out of money and we're looking at a multiple city rescue. In order to do it safely, we would need to pay some officials and police and also a few local chiefs to do this. If you don't know what a chief is in this area of battle, they are like neighborhood bosses. People will go to them before taking it to the police. Normally, a chief can fix a problem, but as always, there are those chiefs that are also corrupt. This would be a tri-city rescue, but all these cities are within a few miles of each other. Really, like one big city. Uh, you don't know the difference when you move from one to the next. Anyway, the problem is that each area has its own police, government, and chiefs. All three are wedged into the inner parts of the city. This alone creates a real problem. Getting in is always easy. It's getting out with the kids in tow. That is the hard part. Also, getting them to a safe house without shadows is also a concern. We could fight it out and people would get killed, and that is just not the way we do things at the Quest, ECSS. Negotiations were very difficult with those involved. Seems to be an ego thing in this area. Well, probably most anywhere. Um, anyways, uh, then if they all found out we were also talking with the other neighborhood cities, then it would also be a disaster. We were close to making a deal. Then they popped up the price, uh, which is also kind of common. Um, and it was beyond what we had by a long way. So we stepped back. We have been promised some donations, but as of now, have failed. They have failed to come through. So the more time that passed, the more likely it would be that they would all find out, and we were talking to all the other cities. This would also compromise the safe houses and so on. We could just do one, but why when there was a real need to end all three or end all of these brothels? They were all connected in some ways with the same gang. We paused to group and think this out. None of our plans came with a good ending, and we decided to walk away and hope something would change this situation. I had just gotten back from the Glades doing some counseling with some old friends, and I found an anonymous donor. He had given us just what we needed. I got on the horn and advised my commanders, and that would get back to them. I started to think, screw the dirty, greedy bastards. We will get the rescues another way. These kids we knew were in throwaway brothels. That is, when they are used up, they are no good, even to sell to another brothel or have their organs harvested. And so they are just disposed of. Um, One thing to keep in mind, in a lot of these places, it's so easy to obtain these little kids just merely because of how poor people are. And if you've seen some of my other videos or read my book, Operation Z, on Amazon, anyway, you'll see how horrific this is, and that normally when a kid gets sick or something, all they'll do is just sell the kid to another brothel and let them deal with it. Uh, but a lot of times when they're too sick, or they're not going to come back, or they're not able to service the 20 guys a day, then what they'll do is there's doctors out there in hospitals that will actually harvest the organs and then sell them mainly to China. Anyways, enough of that. So the money was necessary for a safe outcome. We had the supplies due to our last year's fundraiser. We knew the shape of the kids. We knew that they would need a lot of medical attention. This also creates a need for a medical staff, even though it's cheap. They would have to miss work for a couple of days. We had to be prepared. I sat with this and a few focus drinks and called the team. Seems great minds think alike, and they were thinking the same thing I was. We would do this without the payoffs. While we were coming up with the ideas, one of the team said, I wish we had a floater. That's what we call a helicopter. Right then, a light went off in my head, and I told them I would call them back. There was a church group that had offered me an emergency extraction at any time, and if we ever needed it, with one of their helicopters. So what I did was I called them, and they said, we only do this for you, for an emergency, and that I was kind of sort of out of that perimeter. I explained where and what and had gone on up to now, and that it would be an emergency extraction, sort of. I heard laughter on the other end, and as someone muffled on the phone, when they got back on, they asked when and where. I told them I would let them know in a few hours, and it would be ASAP. They said, well, we will wait by the phone. So I banged heads with the team again while I was getting our copter. The team was GPSing the 3 locations and extraction routes and safe houses. The team was waiting on another lead and would call me back. This is kind of common. This is kind of the process that we go through each time. Although I'm telling you, this one was absolutely unique. So anyway, after a couple hours later, they called me back and they had a plan. This would involve 40 teammates along with 12 medical personnel and nearly 30 volunteers. And we would have 7 transports with a few bikes thrown in. There would be 7 available safe houses, but we would try to only use 3. We always shoot with a lot more places to take the kids in case something does come up, if we get shadows or whatever it may be, so that we can get the kids out and into safety as quick as possible. Sometimes we're not so fortunate and we have less, but this time it was just like overwhelming. Our volunteers continue to watch the brothels with head counts and traffic until we hit the brothels. Then, for the cream of the crop, one of our teammates was a regular skydiver and had called his place to see if we could charter a plane for the night. It would come at a price, but everything we had planned to do would cost about the same as if we had paid off the officials who we could not really trust anyway. So here's the plan. The skydiving plane would be flown by one of our teammates and would carry 15 teammates. They would drop 6 on one brothel, 5 at the next, and 4 at the last. It would be a night dive since the brothels were all wedged into the inner city. They would all have only one way in and one way out. So we would have transports with medical and volunteers roaming around the 3 areas. When the divers are jumping, they will notify the transports and they will move in on the brothels to wait for their little passengers. Once the rescues are successful, they will take the girls to a designated area outside the cities. During their ride from the brothels, medical will evaluate them, finding the ones that are in the worst condition. They will advise the commander, and he will monitor all the transport's progress and tally the number of serious conditioned girls and notify the helicopter how many will be boarding. It was very sensitive because this was a really bad, these brothels that we were hitting were in really bad shape. Understand, it didn't have to be this dramatic, but just the way things fell together, it just made sense. And so that's what we did. And plus it makes for changes the pace a little bit, so to speak. Anyway, at this point, with everyone clear of the shadows, the helicopters will meet at a designated location and take the girls, to the most serious girls, conditions, and transport them directly to a small private hospital that we have acquired for the night, courtesy of the church group. The rest will then head to a separate safe house where the norm comes in. Treat them to a bath, explain what's going on, gift them, and take care of any injuries that they may have that we can take care of on the way that will be necessary. So all the calls had been made. We sat down. We sat a countdown, and all was ready. All was perfectly executed exactly. 11 of the kids were in very serious condition, and used the helicopter for them. They would need to stay in the hospital for a while, but for most were assured of a good recovery. Some of the others were touch and go. We will report back when we know. Now understand, the helicopter has a capability of carrying, I believe it was like 20 or so, and with this many kids, and then having the doctors or the nurses on board, it starts to take up some space and weight. Although these kids were small, so we were at a certain point, and luckily we didn't have to make a decision on who got to go on and who didn't. All we had to do is evaluate, judge, and then put those kids on board. So like I say, it's not just the skills that we use. It's not just luck. There's something else going on, and I owe that to the Quest family. Anyway, let's see. This one is one we call a quiet rescue because the girls were in such bad shape. There was not a lot of noise. That will change in the coming days. They are free for now, and thank you, donors, and thank you to the Anonymous Fund. Oh yeah, rescued. Brothel 1, 24. Brothel 2, 27. Brothel 3, 21. That's a total of 72, bringing our grand total to 1581. So, thanks all of you. And there's more coming, as always. Thank you.